Okay, time to get started. He says as he still needs to adjust the microphone a little bit. My apologies for any mic bump there. Okie dokie. So we have been a little busy. I haven't actually got any development done since yesterday's stream, but uh, that's not surprising at this point. Basically, if I refresh that, that'll show that the planning item dependency attached tasks. So we have um, the need to introduce the concept of a dependency between planning items that allows us to indicate that other planning items should be taken before others. As I think about this from a UI perspective, I'm not liking it because I think that what I do here is going to be lacking. I think it's not going to be as effective as I want it to be in terms of the navigation. So if this was full screen, like if I have a planning item and I bring it up, right, I don't expand it like this. I click on it and I can see down the right hand side. If I am in Jira or something, I click on that other planning item. It navigates to the full screen view of that planning item. If I'm in a planning item, a full screen view of a planning item, and I click on the dependent planning item, it will navigate to the planning item, right? With this layout, I have no way of doing that effectively. Even if I put them down the right hand side, there's no navigation here. Hey, daughter. Good morning. So this isn't going to be perfect, but the concept still applies. So it's not like I can't proceed with the actual development. It's just I don't think the UI makes it possible to do this cleanly or implement this the way it really should be implemented. So yeah. Just the way the layout of the UI works. So if I'm introducing the dependencies between planning items, so I say, okay, well, configure Gitty and multi-user workflow. I need to have the ability to see, oh, well, another simple planning item and sample upcoming planning items should be done before this one, right? There's a dependency. What does it mean to have them listed here to the right? It doesn't do anything for me because I can't click and navigate up to those in this form, right? Very cleanly. And even if I could, it would be very janky as far as an issue goes, as far as a layout goes. Planning items aren't epics. They can be epics, but they're not necessarily epics. You can have dependencies. And even if it was an epic, you could have, we need to talk about this epic before this epic, right? This is not necessarily a development dependency. It's a, we don't have the planning in place for it, so we need to do this one before this one or whatever. So it's the concept of being able to say this one has other dependent planning items. So again, it's allowing the users to really, yeah. Epics I've seen are typically independent, although I haven't seen many epics. Nice. Thank you for saving me yet again, sorry about. An epic such as this, creating dependent items, right? If I have another piece of work that's introducing another aspect onto the planning item at the same time, I might want to order them. I might want to say, okay, we don't want to talk about this because we don't have enough structure in place to use that thing. Maybe there's other elements that need to be handled. So it's reasonable to have a dependency. Um, on these things. So, um, forgive me. So yeah, it is a necessity to be able to do that. And the same thing with requirements, right? Requirements will have priority, so we can actually, you know, deprioritize certain requirements. But that's a long way coming, right? I don't think priority and requirements is necessarily a thing right now. Um, but yeah, this is introducing the concept of a dependency upon planning items. So when you create a uh, well, priority is another concept. Dependency is one thing. Priority is another, right? Um, so I also disagree about planning items not equal to epics, but I could see the user not following my rules regardless. And it's kind of why I'm not calling them epics in any way, because if you want to make a planning item smaller, if you want to make a planning item more of a story, and that's pretty much how I use it right now, right? I'm using them essentially as large stories. Um, all right. Um, an epic to me is an entire feature set. So an epic is more a component of an initiative, but um, we recently took an epic of 15 to 20 items and made each an epic. Wow. Um, again, this is the problem. This is the problem. Why do you care about an epic being too big? What is too big to you? If you've got work to do, too big is at that point a business problem because they can't deliver. So what you got to do is figure out how to break things down into deliverable chunks. That's when epics are like an epic can go on for quite a while. It's why it's called an epic. But what does your delivery cycle look like? That's really the measure for you as developers, right? Do you is it we're introducing a new screen, it's going to collect a load more information, it's going to we're going to produce reports, we're going to do this and this and this and this on it, and delivering the screen and starting to capture the information is totally possible as a releasable item. That's all you really yeah. But again, that's why this, so that the progress is visible towards an actual business requirement, right? So they know that it's been tasked out because it's a complicated thing. Yes, if they want to break down these planning out these requirements into more granular things, so we need to see a screen rather than we need the screen and a report, etc. That's up to the business, right? But these requirements can be, potentially individual components. So but it's again the ability for the business to see the progress without the developers having to worry about showing it, right? But the developers being able to break down the work into a way that they can actually say, we need to do this and this and this, and these people can work on this piece, and this piece can be worked on by this piece, but it all rolls up into one requirement. So that's kind of the idea. So I mean, to keep to the Jira analogy, right? Yes, a planning item could be considered an epic, a requirement could be considered a story, and the tasking out of the story is done for the developer's purpose. But we're going to size the tasks, not the requirements. There's also the question of what do you tell executives, and they seem to only care about epics. Well, I think it was Jensen. I saw something yesterday. Jensen Wang. Well, that was a stupid comment. Um, I can't. I can't in good. I can't in good conscience say take anything he says um to heart. Um, he said something yesterday about um I thought I saw something, and I don't think I can attribute it to him, but it was basically about not really caring about the micro updates, more caring about the bigger picture. But it looks like he actually, Jensen Huang from Nvidia, actually goes like hunting people down and trying to get them to micromanage. So that's not the example I was trying to set there. But what I was trying to say is the entire purpose of this product, this platform, is to try and represent the business to the business and the underlying pieces to the people who care about it the most. So you shouldn't have to care about telling executives, oh, we've got this feature and this feature and this feature. It should be easily translatable by a product manager who has done this. I actually got the opportunity to see some planning recently, and it was very well done. And I think it would fit well in terms of well, I don't think it would fit neatly into Liquid Sky. It was an interesting reflection, and it's something I'm considering. But basically, it achieved this. It set down what these were very clearly, and I think that's where we're going to see um, when we look at it. But my biggest challenge for this platform will be flipping people's ways of thinking about, because the way that people have been trained to do things in Jira is not the same thing in this platform. But anyway, so what I'm doing, building out set tasks, dependent planning item scripts, update, create planning item. We also need to have dependent tasks as well. I guess this is inherently more the day-to-day tool. Uh, well, long-term planning and prep is a necessity in this platform, so it's really guiding it, right? So, yeah. Okay. So the fun thing here is I have planning item. I have tasks on the planning item. I have no dependency on the tasks. I got to learn the tasks. I could easily say what are the four goals we want to achieve with the software this year. Yeah. Okay, so let's move this. Let's move this. Move this. Move this. And this. Yeah, I mean, the concept would, right? We'd lay down some initiatives, we'd set some goals. I mean, there's a long-term plan here, right, that you can kind of discuss, right? The initiative, this is the basic form of the initiative, just so we have enough to wrap it up to initiative. There's a lot more stuff we want to add to initiatives as a concept, but the concept would be you create an initiative, and that initiative could contain many one or many planning items, right? Those planning items, uh, roll up into that initiative, and you can kind of look at every level. Where are we with this? So your initiative is going to show a progress bar. That progress bar is of the work items we created for the planning items that we associated with this initiative. How many are done, right? Um, and depending on estimations, etc. Like if we've got time estimates, how much time have we put in versus how much time have we estimated? Those sorts of things Um, should be available if you want them. Personally, I want to go to the. I'm going to do the points first, but the time is also something that we do need to allow for. If you limited the concurrent initiatives, that would be interesting. I think that's a uh, that could definitely be a business rule to say, okay, you've only got, you know, you do not have enough capacity to deal with this. But I think that's also, again, what providing visualization to this process will provide. Um, provide. Um, providing the tools to visualize where the process is will attain um, doing that, right? So you can understand, oh, we do not have enough capacity to take on anything else, um, because we are struggling on, initiative X. Initiative Y is almost complete, but it's also 2 months past when we expected we'd have it done by. Those sorts of things are things that should be visualized without having to pull developers in to understand where they are on things, right? Now, does this provide the ability to have developers abuse it? Yeah, but so does Jira. You can game the system all you want, right? If you go in here and add tasks and you add really ridiculous granular tasks, you can make it look like you're super productive. If you're burning through a 3 point task every 10 minutes and your speed is ridiculous, it's going to show. Better developers than sure on others. Yeah. Well, yeah. So we need to begin with um, some scripts. I deliberately did these in different ways, by the way. Developers aren't, well, actually, you say that, but developers are definitely shiny, right? So they'll tackle anything they feel is interesting, which means that developers would take on 12 initiatives if they thought those 12 initiatives were cool. Um, they'd also put their heads down and just get on with a lot of stuff, right? And just get stuff knocked out. And the quality would be mixed, but you could end up with a lot of different things. Which is why waterfall is so appealing. Um, yeah. I resend that. Oh, shiny. Yeah. Morning, sir. Um, yeah. Uh, developers will go on and get on with whatever they can do if they think it's cool, right? So I don't think any hard limits on number of initiatives you could take um, is something necessary at this point. I think it's um, a how do I put it? It can be enforced once we get to the tools for visualizing progress, etc. Okay, so um, yes, that's where I was going there. So I deliberately kind of tasked these out in a bit of a different way to how I've done things in the past. So something about putting epics to 3 bins. What were they? Not sure. So this one, new table for depends on planning items, update script. Right. That's a really tiny task. We can knock that out very quickly. But what does it mean when I'm about to turn around and do update create planning items? So I'm starting to review this from the perspective of, okay, this and this can be the same thing because they deal with the same thing. Updating the integration event and publishing. I didn't actually mention publishing here, but it's a kind of an implicit behavior in the pattern of the platform. Right. So these two can technically sit together. If I was going to do a PR, these two would be a PR, right? So this one as a PR in its own doesn't make sense. This one a PR makes sense. Um, updating the UI. Um, um, Why did I do it? Dang it, I lost the edit in this one. Um, that's funny. Yeah, so this one, update the UI, is lacking some detail, but ultimately this could be its own planning item, its own task because it could be its own PR. Um, and then we go to the back end side of that. So if we're talking vertical slice, suppose these two could be considered part of the same. However, the UI project and the back end project are two different things. So in theory, two different developers could work on the same things and get that moving. From this side, I decided to put everything in here now. So this will be the script, the receiver to include it. So this would, everything here would get us from receiving the data in the view to publishing the view. So that makes sense. It's worth doing as one set of one piece. I am lacking the update the UI or the other thing. Also, the update UI change I made before for create, it didn't take. So I think that's fixed now. So support features re-architecting. Backend, front end, or mobile server is a pretty obvious divide of work. Yeah, yeah. But again, we talk about vertical slices. I've seen a lot of that recently, talking about vertical slice architecture and tackling, all the pieces. It does make me think about how people do workflows and what my software does differently to other people's software, and what does their workflow look like. Um, okay, so let's get started on some development for the day. Yeah, still hard to know three languages and support iOS, Android, and whatever your server is written in all in one by one dev plus understand the DB. Yeah. Again, I saw another post yesterday that was, can we please stop talking about full stack? Full stack is has long stopped being possible. Nurse Chair, thank you very much for the follow. Welcome in. If you have any questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, you're more than welcome to join in the conversation. Um, full stack is the way at a startup. Oh, and I get that, right? I'm playing that role, right? However, at some point you need to hand off to experts that because you'll get the better out of the platform. Just a fellow C# Angular dev, most of liking. More than welcome. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Um, so we're going to start on dependent planning items. We're going to start with this script. We're going to move quickly through into doing the other things. My workflow right now, because again, I'm developing everything, is I don't stop and create PRs for every single thing. No one else is reviewing my code. If I get to the point where other people are working with me on this on a day-to-day basis with it, then I would definitely consider doing more PRs to make sure that I'm not doing massive changes to the code. But while I am solo and I am in charge, I will do what's most pragmatic for the stream and for development. So we're gonna do a feature, introduce dependent planning items. PRs are yeah, I won't disagree with that. That is fine. Okay. I will say, disclaimer, my Angular is not as good as I would like it to be. Actually, I'm in the background working to try and change that a little bit by getting someone on to do some streams, maybe helping with a little bit of Angular education and signals education. So I'm in the process of setting that up. I saw a LinkedIn post saying they are faster. Fast. PRs. Okay. So right now, again, as always, I am not contribute to main versus PR debate. Okay. I did see something yesterday about people saying don't merge into main or don't do that. It slows you down. Is that what are we talking about the same LinkedIn post? I think we probably are, aren't we? I didn't read it because it just seemed like. So here's the thing: I have a lot of opinions. I share a lot of those opinions when I stream. I don't go writing them down in LinkedIn posts all the time, and because I don't fancy just being constantly debated on what I think. I'm okay talking about what I think and changing what I think if I feel that I understand something differently now after a conversation. But I don't go actively seeking it. So, like Milan yesterday, no, 5 days ago. Are you tired of organizing your project across layers, vertical slice architecture to the rescue instead of horizontal layers? VSA organizes code by feature, use case. Why should you care? VSA gives you improved cohesion, easier maintenance, reduced complexity, focus on business logic. Um, but again, vertical slice if you tell UI, domain, repository, database. So I'm essentially proposing doing that. I'm just splitting out UI from that entire thing and doing everything in the back end. But then to point to a code thing that has everything in one static class, I want to see again talking about when you're dealing with architecture like that, you've got to do it. Um, you've got to do something. You can't just um, read someone's article or watch someone's video and become an expert on the other side. And it's easy when you put it like that, but then you hit a business use case and it's a little harder to adapt. And that's where most products go wrong when they hit the oh, I don't have an answer for how to build that. So initiatives, dependent planning items. So apart from the fact I just forgot that. So we're going to start with the planning items component, right? With the planning items system. I'm going to create a new table. Um, Planning item dependencies. Yeah, we're going to go with that for now. I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to name that in a way that it isn't like, oh, well, it's dependent upon this requirement, it's dependent upon this. I don't want to start that path. I'm not trying to navigate down that. What I do going to do is make sure it's at least not a silly name. Planning item dependent planning items would be silly. Dependent planning items would not really tell the story. This is a planning item dependencies. So, um, uh, planning item identifier, unique identifier not null, and then column depends on, right? Date added. Yes, that's kind of what I was trying to say then. I realize that that might allude to the fact that there's more than other planning items. However, we're not going to introduce that concept. I have no reason to believe that that's going to be a thing. This is going to be a challenge. There's no. It's either there or it's not. So there's no need for date last updated. This is going to create us a um, a refactoring challenge. Because the base object always has last updated on it. But there's no need for it. If we have a different set of dependencies, where they're going to calculate the diff, or we're going to wipe out everything that's there and recreate. I don't want to put a unique. This does not need to be published as a unique identifier, so it does not have its own identifier. We're going to see how this goes. But like I said, this is going to create a problem. So planning item dependencies, generate DDL to clipboard. We go over here. Let's rename this a little bit to be table-based planning item. Let's okay. So yeah, the fact that this doesn't have a last updated, we probably want who. This is data grip. Yeah. I like data grip because it's exactly the same as every other IDE, and I can also switch between different projects. So I can have different database connections, etc., and just switch between them quickly. Introduce a new concept through the UI, so finding out how to do this via the DB. Seems pretty nice, not gonna lie. Yeah, I like being. I'm pretty much all in on the JetBrains thing. So I use WebStorm for the Angular piece because it's a little nicer at dealing with the Angular pieces than Rider. Rider for all the .NET stuff. The .NET backend is pretty hefty. Yeah. And then data grip for the database. When I use SQL Management Studio, it is so SQL Management Studio does have better tools for backing up databases and exporting scripts and stuff than data grip at this point, from like connecting to remote databases, etc. Yeah. You add a planning item dependency. What other information would the user want? The only other thing I'm thinking about there, by the way, is the concept of the user that did add the dependency. What do I call that everywhere else? Planning items created by user identifier. Created by user identifier. No, we're not going to capture that. That's the sort of stuff I don't want to overthink. I think this is the bare minimum here would be capture the fact that there is a dependency and who did it. And then, so by doing this, what I have is created a need to retain this data. So if I change the dependencies, if I added a few more dependencies to the list, I can't wipe out all the previous dependencies. I've now got to do the calculation of what's changed. and add the new ones in and remove any ones that have been removed. So I've got to do that. That's a challenge. Yeah, so I do want to add the bare minimum, but it does create, every time I do that, it does create, yeah. I used to use Rider, but I had issues with it using a lot of memory at times. It's not worth it if you aren't using the shortcuts, and even then a bunch of the shortcuts aren't safe, meaning the refactor will break the code anyways. You're talking about Rider? Um, I disagree with that, but it's fine. Um, I mean, Rider for me doesn't take any more memory than Visual Studio. Um, the Rider backend is what's running to make sure that like things like resharper and stuff run without slowing down, which is what often bogged down Visual Studio. Right. But Rider itself, I mean, yeah, 4.5 gig, but I also have 92 projects, and right now 16 of them are running. So um, I'm not sure Visual Studio would do any better than that. Also, Visual Studio, by the way, opens every one of those 16 projects in a brand new window, in a brand new terminal window, which is fun. VS Code is way later. That's probably the comparison. Yeah, VS Code is not a fun experience for me. Way too much customization required to get VS Code to even be useful. Yeah. So this is the Liquid Sky platform. This is what I'm building. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of moving parts. So yeah, so I don't really have an issue. But then again, I also have, in terms of resources, I've got a lot available to me, right? So I've got a decent CPU and a lot of memory available to me. So yeah. I'm not entirely sure what caused it to use so much memory. I tried debugging and reinstalling, but on average it was above 6 gig with only 2 projects. Oof. Yeah, I don't know. Depending on what you're doing, yeah, I'm not sure there. Um, okay, so we've got the scripts, right? Add script for planning item dependencies. So yeah, what I've just done there is I've created a need to retain a planning item dependency between changes, which is going to create a problem later on, but we'll worry about that later. Yeah, it took me a while to transition away from Visual Studio into Rider. But now, recently, I've been doing developers.stream on Mondays and Fridays, which is a different project. And I've been using Visual Studio because it's an open source project and I want to demonstrate it works in Visual Studio. But it's quite a painful experience to go back to in the same way. So I'm struggling there and jumping into Rider because some of the tooling I have in Rider is much nicer. If I want to do migrations, I don't have to use command line. I can use the IDE. Why do you have two projects going at the same time? Probably like to have 10 to 12 projects going. Oh, you mean like developers upstream and Liquid Sky? It feels normal. How are you doing? Um, because it acts as a bit of a palette cleanser. Developers.stream is a project I've wanted to build for many years, and it allows me to share some code and some ideas with people. Whereas Liquid Sky is very closed source, which does turn people away. So if I want to engage people more and talk about software, developers.stream also gives me a chance to do that and give back to people as well. So, and I do want the ability to have shout outs built into my stream so that one line here is not my, personal shout out machine. Good morning, one line. I did. I didn't realize my balance spread is way less than ideal. But that's why I do Mondays and Fridays with developers.stream and then Liquid Sky throughout the week and in my spare time. I find the balance okay right now. If we need to move it around, we will do. But yeah. But developers.stream being fully open source is going to be um, yeah, a little nicer if I can get it up to a good point. I just don't believe in opening that up to the group. Yeah. It's certainly what I'm trying to do. My goal is to automate myself out of every job I have. To be honest, you should never really be worrying about like trying to keep jobs anyway. It should be replaceable. Okay. If I could automate cooking dinner, I'd be thrilled. I need a robot. There's easier ways than building a robot for food. Add script for planning out dependencies. Right, so let's add that script in there. Okay, so if we go over here, essentially, I've done that, right? Which is not a reasonable task because it immediately goes into this task, right? Where I've got to tackle the back end anyway. So I really didn't save myself anything there. So, but that's why using the platform, building with the platform will, I'll start to reflect on what is and isn't useful. Can I, how would I recommend doing these things? Every little step gets there. So we go to planning. We need to go to domain, entities, and now we have planning item dependency. And the problem with this is this cannot be an entity base. Because an entity base by default has last update on it, and last updated has absolutely no relevance here. So why? So I have two options. Modify the thing I just created and tell a lie and put a last update on there, even though it can never be updated, just so it neatly fits with this. Right? Or I can create another abstraction that's above this that I can then inherit from, but doesn't have updating. Is it ideal? Probably not. So if I have public abstract class non-updatable entity base, right? T key, right? Identity, T key, right? And most of this behavior, right? Put that out. We paste that in there. We remove that piece. I'm not saying this is how I'm going to do it. I'm just saying this is possible to do this. Do that. Paste that. Remove that. Oh, that's going to be a problem. That's going to be a way bigger problem. I'm just saying it's an option to try and get this behavior in there. But it has way more implications to do that. I've seen this pattern. So what's wrong with the pattern? you're doing the not like this, but why? Because I don't like abstract classes and then to double inherit them, I can't even spell. So to me, is it a good idea? Probably not. However, I have okay. So the reason I backed out quickly on that one is I have this update last updated, right? So I'm clearly expecting that all entities should be updatable, right? So I immediately went to the idea that it's an entity base, right? But it doesn't need to be, right? Because it doesn't actually follow the same rules. So it's not even just that. So an entity should not be something I just wipe out or I change or I track no changes against, right? What are abstract classes for? Genuine question. I've only seen them overridden methods that are default methods. Um, Abstract classes are for shared implementation that every single class will need. They are a good way of making sure that you can't create an instance of them, but they have some of the behavior necessary that would be shared between all inheritors, all children. So in this case, what I'm using entity base for is it actually tracks domain events, right? So the concept of a domain event is included in this. I can add domain event from a class that inherits. So if I have planning item and I want to add a domain event, I can just call add domain event on the planning item, right? So I have that shared behavior, that shared data state. Um, um, why can't entity base be a class? What is? Well, entity base. So this is that abstract. This is to make sure that I can provide long and int versions of the key. Right, so it's a simple inheritance. Virtual methods and abstract classes are somewhat faster than interface methods. Even with new.NET, with interface implementation, which I think is really bad. I don't like the idea of implementation on the interfaces. But what if you have two classes that have a shared behavior? They both need to do a single thing. So a lot of times I'll use this in terms of if I have like let's say I wanted to log something before I actually let's have a talk. I'm genuinely interested. I'm not closed-minded to a different approach here. Okay, so let's say I have a vtable for abstract classes directly available if I'm but for interface requires a bit of trickery to get. But I mean, realistically, we're not going to notice that performance difference unless we're generating, like everything with .NET, unless you're generating a lot of objects, you're not going to really notice that performance impact, right? Unless you're saying it's very noticeable on one invocation. What's this going to be? Oh, let's do record some data, right? No, that's a bad name for a class. Data recorder. Right. So I have public yeah. Yeah, that's my normal expectation. It's like we worry about performance, but what we're talking about is, you know, a millisecond per 10,000 invocations and we're doing one or two a second, then it's not going to really make a massive difference. Not saying you shouldn't know about it. Like, if I needed to understand more performance, I'd dig deeper into the hows and whys. Well, I want to show some. I've got a different. Um, Actually, let's take your example, right? So public class. Um, well, no. I have a specific example. Let me do this. Public void, record t data, right? So I want to record something, and we have a private I data store. Wow, my brain's become corrupted, although it's actually partially due to the IDE being broken. Okay, now, actually, let's say this is a SQL data store of some form, right? Legendary Urban Hacker, thank you for following. And I decided to create another um, um, right, private Mongo data store. I've not prepared in any way, shape, or form for this thing. So if it goes weird and it looks wrong, I reserve the right to be terrible. Right. Do chess. So Mongo data recorder is a data recorder, right? So they have the same thing, right? So how do I get this away? Right, I can't just say it's a data recorder. Now, obviously, the likelihood is these are going to inherit from an interface, right? So these are probably going to be public interface, I data store, right? And it has chord T data as well, right? So, well, I'm saying if I want those both to have the behavior, what do you do? So, without creating an abstract class, do you just inherit from this and override? Like, this is an implementation, right? Let's say this is a SQL data recorder for something, right? So my natural would be to go to uh, abstract class data recorder, private I data store, data store. Well, no, they're not inherited. They do the same thing, but they're different implementations of the same thing. So my go-to here would be to create an abstract class, and I'd even put on there public void record, right? Okay, so if I use, why not use an iData recorder? So if we do public interface iData recorder, that has a method void record t T data. This is an iData recorder. This is an iData recorder. Is that your point? That solves the problem. Well, no, I won't, because these have their own stores. The fact that it's an iData store doesn't matter. The interface doesn't have any concept of that right now, right? So now I say, okay, I want to log every time I'm going to store something. How many classes have to change? Right. So I have to do, okay, well, we want to log. So we need to, we need a logger on here now. So I logger SQL data recorder, logger. Now we need a logger on here. Right. I think you can see where this is going, right? So logger dot, write data. What the heck? Which language are you in? Right. So we just keep doing this. We keep adding more behavior. Morning, Mr. Ranhorn. And every time we have a need to change one, we have to change both, or we have an inconsistency and now they're done. A data recorder can't be a class and data store interface either. Mm-hmm. So the way I would do it, again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, is I'd probably create an abstract class. I'd inject the logger in there. I'd log here. It's consistent. It's, whatever. And now our data recorder, we don't need any of that. Now, what we do need on here is the instance of iData store. So it does mean we have to do, whether inject it in here or however we do it, new SQL data store. But we can get rid of all of that. And now the implementation is consistent. Will this compile without abstract? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I don't want to ever create an instance of data recorder. I want to protect that from being changed, from being implemented. I don't want to create an instance of data recorder and open up this. I want to control those dependencies and provide instances that do what I want to do. So by abstract, I can't create an instance of it. If I do that, it'll still work if I want to provide a different data store. So if I have a need for a more dynamic system where I can create a new type of data store, but I don't have to create an inherited type from it, yeah, I can do that. But intent, right? So I can't instantiate an instance of a data recorder, right? I can't do var recorder equals new data recorder, right? It'll complain at me, right? Cannot create an instance of the abstract type or interface data recorder. What I don't like about abstract is virtual. So virtual just means, oh, by the way, you need to have this behavior, right? So let's say in here, we expect every data recorder to, we need to say validate, right? So we say validate data, right? Now, what does this know about validation? It doesn't know anything about validation because the validation might be can it be inserted into SQL? Can it be inserted into Mongo? Right? So if this is a data recorder, new Mongo data store, right? These know about that thing, right? They will have the knowledge of what it is to be validated. So if we create a protected virtual void validate t data, right? Uh, abstract, sorry. Abstract, sorry. Not abstract. Abstract will force, virtual will offer. Sorry, my brain. Um, so yeah, in this case, I'd force that validation. Sorry, my brain was going to this next, and I kind of fitted it into virtual. Um, Virtual is useful if you have a default behavior, right? Let's say I don't want this to be um, forced, but I want to be able to provide it. So if I want to make this virtual, right? Um, yes, it has no behavior, but I can also override it in here now. So public protected override validate. Help me there. Now I can do whatever I need to do, validate this, but this one doesn't have to do anything, right? So if validation doesn't matter, would you put virtual on a method that has a definition? I feel like that usage is what I'm actually disliking. Yes, I mean it's actually one of the things you should do is if you have a virtual method and you override it, good practice is to call the base implementation because if it does actually have behavior in it, um, then you want to make sure that behavior is not lost. That's a practice. I can't remember whether you do it at the beginning or the end. I always get that messed up. But there's some general good behaviors around using virtual and overriding virtual methods. Just thinking the other day, I want to try and create a higher level language over C sharp, like not allowing void and only task or eliminating other keywords over others. Is the language feature the problem, or people just using the language features wrong? Yeah. So I would say that abstract, yes. So virtual, I probably don't do that. And um, if the implementation of record was going to change, I would have probably an overridden method called impl that would deal with what recording this is, but it would also call that as part of the base record. So it would always do the certain things and then call whatever the actual specification is for the individual recorder. I'll do that in several places. But I wouldn't say abstract classes are bad, and you can't achieve the same thing with the interface. I really dislike virtual and overriding because it can be very difficult to tell what is being overridden if done wrong. Well, you shouldn't be overriding something you don't understand anyway, right? You should understand, and with the tooling the way that it is now, it's much easier to do that. Where I'm sure I have virtual somewhere in here. Um, oh, I know where it does it. So if I go to infrastructure configurations, um, oh, that's actually a different pattern entirely. Where do I do this that it bugs me? Oh, I know where. I know where. One in Apex. So on model creating inside of PanDB context is an overridden virtual method. I call base on model creating anyway. If you click on this, it'll take you to the implementation, and there you go. It's just a method it will call, and you can override it. So when it calls it, it will be there. So it guarantees to the to the compiler that method will be there. Um, I use more in library code also, which I don't really write. Oh, DB context. There will be a version of it somewhere up in the guts, but at that level, on the DB context level, it does not have it. What does DB context? No, it doesn't. It just calls it when it's creating it. So whatever configures the DB context is calling on model creating, and that's where you configure it. So yeah, there is no implementation underneath. So doing that is completely redundant. Yeah. Yeah. So it's called all the time. It has to be there, which is why the virtual and why not an abstract, right? You don't need to call you don't need to implement this if you're not doing anything special with it, right? So why bother? But why check or do any extra pieces when you can just say, okay, call on model creating? Oh, there's nothing in that. It's fine. It just does. It's a method call. It's done. So yeah, it could be quite a rabbit hole. Anyway, coming back to what I was actually doing before, right? So I was talking about entity base. So what I really should have realized here very soon, much sooner, was this object, this planning item dependency, isn't an entity. It's not something that I need to base things around. It's associated to an entity. What you said made sense. That it was a worthwhile diversion, right? Um, so planning item dependency, there is no need for it to track last updated because they're not going to get updated. There's no need for me to, I don't have um, a, I also didn't put a tenant identifier in this. Um, does it need a tenant identifier if it has a planning item dependency? So it has a planning item and then a dependency record. So no, that should be validated anyway. Yeah, definitely good diversion. Refine my opinions a bit. Nice. Off the work. Take care, Delta. As always, thank you. So yeah, this doesn't need to be an entity, and that was my flaw as I was thinking about it. Grid planning item identifier. This is an identifier, not an ID. I'm not storing. Uh, actually, actually, that probably does want to be ID. Let's see how I did it in associated project. Yeah, I do. Okay, I do want to do drop table. So I am in the database here. I don't have many kind of references because it's mainly about storing the data and getting out there as quick as possible. However, in this case, I do have a foreign key, not an explicit foreign key, but a implied. So that looks more like that. If you are new to the stream and you have any questions, thoughts, opinions of what I'm doing, you're more than welcome to join in with any conversation. I'm happy to answer questions on the wheres, the hows, the whys. Dethrone lol. That's a cool name. Thank you very much for helping me hit my follow goal. 1,200 followers. Thank you. Very much appreciate that. So, do you store DB queries as functions in the code and the DB itself? DB queries as functions in the code. You mean store procedures? Um, Hello again, Emperor. Um, there is some mix in Liquid Sky. So most queries are handled through entity framework and link. So most querying of the data is handled purely at the ORM layer. There's no actual SQL queries. These scripts are used for configuring the data. There are a few store procedures I use to quickly evaluate whether the tenant you're trying to create is new, and I didn't know quite how efficient that would be to do in C sharp. I don't like to store code in the DB. I don't like store procedures. I don't like functions. I find them to be uh, risky when it comes to where your logic for your application lives. If developers start putting business rules inside of store procs, you have to consider source control around your database stuff, which I don't like the idea of. What if you put all the business logic in the DB? Then at least you're consistent. And if that works for you, then that's fine. Not where I want to put it, but if you have a code base that is doing stuff, why not make it do the business stuff? Because you can change that sooner. Databases are a little bit more. I mean, I suppose you've probably got the pattern down, right? Um, but yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Again, consistency. I if your path is to put it in the DB and that's what you're managing, that's fine. But if you start having it 50-50 or split differently, or every developer can come at it from a different direction, so you end up with some logic in the code and some logic in the DB, it gets very difficult to know where it is. And also, then if that logic is split between the two, your deployment story becomes a little bit more complicated, right? Because you have, yeah, yeah, because you can't write business logic in the SQL. You can you can't write, yeah, because you've got to deploy the application and the SQL in line. Otherwise, the features don't work. Yeah. There are a few store procedures in Liquid Sky. Again, like I said, um, the registering new organization, register. I've got to organize this a little bit better because I'm clearly struggling to deal with it. Um, Commands associate user with tenant workflow. Oh, because I put it in a service because it became a bit more complicated. That's why registered tenant. So does tenant? So I have this tenant search class, and that is tenant search here, and that's executing a store proc. Hey Yusuf, how you doing? Um, how to learn programming? Are you in school? Are you, you know, um, uh, there's all sorts of ways available to you these days. Um, Watching YouTube videos is you know you're in college for software development or for software engineering. Um, what do you want to build? Are you looking at games programming? Are you looking at web programming, mobile, right? Um, all sorts of different options with all sorts of different ways to go about it. Obviously, with game programming, quantum computing, that is the smart level stuff. If you're not even beginning to learn programming, I would not jump to quantum computing. I get some of the concepts down first, but I think Microsoft actually has done a lot recently in quantum, right? Um, didn't they create Q Sharp a long time ago? Yeah, they did. Yeah, yeah. Q Sharp is a thing. My brain cannot even contemplate that. I'm good at math and physics, and I learned some Python. But do you think I can learn quantum computing myself? Having not attempted it, I am not good at math and I'm not good at physics. Um, um, I would say you probably need to make sure you've got a good grounding in general software development practices. You're probably going to want to understand some pretty advanced topics before you try and jump to quantum. Um, yeah, yeah. Like Fuel Schnabel says, this is one of those cases where AI is probably good to set you on a path. Um, uh, yeah, I've done a quantum computing course for the mathematics. A lot of topics in quantum computing were similar in regular computing, like bit parity and error corrections. Right, but understanding those things, uh, and getting a handle on those things. But yeah, so anyway, yeah, I do call some strobe procedures from within Liquid Sky. Um, Thanks, dude. Hope you become a great streamer and YouTuber. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So this is not going to be identifier because this is going to have a reference to the object that's creating it. So there's no point in trying to track an identifier because then when we query it later, we're going to have to join on that GUID. And even though it's a pretty quick lookup and it's possible to index it, it's still not. Um, Also, don't mess around with introducing foreign keys. Obviously, this is essentially a foreign key. Well, it is a foreign key to this, but I don't create an explicit foreign key. I'm okay with the implied. I could create an index on this, but I'm not trying to look at optimizations and modifications to this. This database is primarily write. It is not a lot for reading, right? It's normally reading and pulling by identifier. Um, so yeah, we can optimize later. There's no charge there. Let's go back here. So we have depends on public GUID, depends on not sure I feel comfortable. Let's leave it as that for right now. And then public datetime they added. Oh, we need public GUID created by user identifier. I know it doesn't quite fit with date added, but this is more just to be consistent with what I've got so far. Again, once the pattern's in there, it's not impossible to change, but you've got to make it a deliberate change at the time when that's necessary. So planning item dependency, we need to go and add that to the context now. So planning item public db set, planning item dependency, planning item dependencies. That's going to require configuration. This one, mainly because I'll be explicit about the naming there. And that's enough to do that. So we've got the table, we've got the configuration, we've got it in the DB context. It's that. Add planning item dependency to next. Deflux, good morning. How you doing? Update script to use ID instead of identifier for I hope you are well today. How did I was looking pretty much all of sales stream yesterday. How did they go? Did you get it working in the end or more to come? Nice. Very cool. Okay, so go back here. Update API, update integration. So we didn't include the piece that I'm talking about, but we need to add the ability to now do this. So I'm going to work at it from the other direction here just to try and keep this. So we have a post. Here we have project identifiers. So we're going to follow a similar pattern. Public IEnumerable GUID dependent planning item identifiers. Wordy, yes. Clear, absolutely. Let's not be hiding that or abbreviating that for the sake of trying to make it less characters, fewer characters. Got the multi-tenant logging in using the individual accounts template on Blazor. Nice. Multi-tenancy, nice. That's not out of the box though to deal with multi-tenancy, right? You've had to add that concept in. Assuming we're talking about the same template I used the other week for developers.stream. No, yeah, I had to add factories. Yeah. Multi-tenancy often makes things challenging. Multi-tenant user claims principal factory. There you go. Yep. Better to be clear about what you're doing. Okay, so let's go and add to the application now. So planning items, commands, add planning item. So here's where we're going to do this. It's going to behave similar to the project identifiers. I'm still not entirely sure I'm comfortable with its design overall. I think it's asking for a poor pattern in the long term. That being said, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. The behavior is all wrapped up nice and neat, and it's clear what it's doing. Why in SQL Server there is a way to attach a tenant ID where calls to all queries automatically. Yes, I've seen that and thought to look into using that. Why didn't I do that? But I know what you're talking about. It's funny because with Liquid Sky so far, the number of times I've forgotten tenant identifier and then gone and realized, oh, it needs to be tenant specific, um, is quite laughable. Uh, I still might go back and try the same multiple databases, one per customer with open edit. For the education, worth doing. And if you got it up and running in a couple of days, you've got some time, right? That's right. I get to build some of my first cloud-based services this week. I won't trust myself to always write correct queries. That's why I like the repositories. I do like using the repositories here because it does give me quite a lot of clear query stuff. Yes, you did. So you can sign into Liquid you can sign into developers.stream with Twitch, or you can create an account manually, but you can then also click a button to link your Twitch account to validate that you actually are a Twitch streamer, and that will what will get working eventually is it making a request and storing that as a record to say, yep, I'm a Twitch streamer. So yeah. And every mistake would mean a privacy incident with a lot of people from C-suite asking, why did this happen? Don't want the chief data protection officer to know my name. Yeah, that's not a good place, is it? So easy to do as well. Well, developers.stream is open source, dude. The code's there if you want it. We'll be working on capturing that in a data TBD friend. So latest code should be pushed. Not storing it in the database yet, not doing the full callback, but it's some of it's in there. The concept being there that you click on you sign in to the application into the product into the platform to set up your name and everything like that, and then you link your Twitch account, and that will just say, yeah, I'm a Twitch streamer. And the same will be for YouTube and Kick, etc. That's the plan will be to add those buttons. So that's probably going to be the open source kickoff for those pieces, like adding that behavior. And then that means that when we show the cards, we'll show the platforms you're actually linked to. That is the goal. But I'm trying to get that established enough to be a structure that I'm comfortable maintaining. I get that people might be like, well, why not just let me contribute now? But in the same, I do want it to be in a place where if requests come in to do changes, I understand what those are, and that I'm not just letting, the platform break by not keeping paying close attention to those pieces. But anyway, okay, so now we need to add the ability to do the similar to associate projects. We need to pass through associate projects. Actually, does do a check, so we can use this pattern again. It does a check for what's there and what's not. So which are we adding and which are we removing? And then we add the planning item update. This is debounced, so we don't end up with, if actually, why is that publishing planning item updated? Okay, there's a bug there. There's a bug. Child. There's a bug. So what will happen when we add a planning item? We do associate projects. Now, associate projects does not know whether it's being called from when we're adding or whether we're updating, right? So you'll see associate projects. is also called um, this becomes a service because it's more complicated. We call everything that, so including associated projects. That could, yes. So there's two ways that the Liquid Sky has that right now. Um, the You can log in with Twitch and then you can associate your Twitch account. So you could log in with Twitch and then associate your Twitch account. But you could also log in without Twitch and then associate your Twitch account. So yeah. Um, Hey, Clocks, how you doing? Do you program best in silence or with music? These days, I program best in silence. Well, somewhat silence. I normally have a Twitch stream on or a YouTube video or something like that. I don't necessarily do it completely in silence, but I don't listen to much music anymore. I find it to be too distracting. So yeah, there's a natural bug here which will actually trigger two messages being published because the update. Yeah, this is where we might get over the. No, quite the opposite. So generally, what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, well, if it's a basic add to the table, essentially, I'm just going to call it within here. There's no benefit to doing anything more complicated. However, if it starts to become more complicated, the application code shouldn't be doing all that. I hand it off to a domain service. How long have you been programming for in your career? I started my career in September 1999. So 26 years this year. Um, I mean, I was programming for about solidly like programming, like really get into it for like 4 or 5 years before then. Are you happy with how the web has changed over time? Uh, yeah, there's a lot of stuff now that's possible that wasn't that certainly wasn't possible back then. Um, it's easy to get something productive up and running, um, but I think we had to struggle a lot more to get stuff, and so we had to be a bit more creative. Um, I think that 25 years ago, full stack meant very different thing and was plausible. I think these days, full stack is effective full stack, and that is my key word. I always try to differentiate um, that because doing something is possible. Being effective at stuff is not always easy. Um, is this the new way they're doing the Stack Overflow server now that no one uses the site? I hear you read up a bit on Kafka, but I have no idea if it would be helpful for jobs. Yes. Um, Kafka Service Bus, definitely helpful. Um, Distributed computing in general, it's a harder thing to do. It's not um, uh, it's not easy to pick up, and especially if you're newer to development, then I wouldn't recommend jumping straight into Kafka. I think it will break your brain a little bit because there's a lot more things around the edges that you don't consider that will bite you. Um, Never mind your own Kafka cluster. Agree full. Yeah. Use a lot in manufacturing, something like events and like knowing when things happen. Something. Yeah. It's useful tech if you need what it provides, like real-time flow of events coming in and multiple consumers that read in different places. If you need a SQL server, don't use Kafka. No, definitely don't use Kafka for data storage. You're a .NET dev. My brain's been broken for years, Lost. I'm with you there, Mars. Good morning. So what I was saying here is basically once the behavior starts to become a little bit more involved in what I'm updating, how I'm doing it, I don't try to do it inside of the application stack anymore. So all this is doing is validating, do I need to change something? Do I need to invoke this method? And that's all the job of this. And then it hands off that data. And what it needs to update is not the concern of the handler. So this panning item domain service is what's doing that. In the add right now, it's a relatively simple, just create it and move on. But that's no longer the case. We're going to have to add this. And obviously I've identified a bug with this because you can actually deal with update versus delete. There are also multiple different messaging services that might be better than Kafka, like AWS SQS. I'm in college, but I really love the high-level tech more than programming. SQS and Kafka are not interreplaceable. No, very different things. You're more interested in the ops side of things, the actual technology stacks, rather than the actual development against them. They're better than Kafka. I mean, for certain scenarios, better. In other, Kafka is better. We are all DevOps now. No, we are not all DevOps. No, it's wrong. If you add DevOps to my plate, you get 50% of my development capacity. If that. Sorry, my voice just broke. Full ops dev stack. Yeah. So I mean, going back to the like, what's changed? Like, is the web better? There's way more to do these days than there used to be. Deploying applications, building applications, like building software. A lot of people can build software, right? Anyone can essentially throw code together. Getting an application out the door and making it stand up, that's a whole challenge. I'd say some of it is because tech like is what allows real scale, but I always hear caring too much about scale, you'll never reach or manage is worst enemy. Yes, chasing scale that you don't understand. The balance you've got to balance for, like, this application is balanced for, it can deal probably with a good chunk of users. It's built to be scalable, but it's not scaled. There's a lot of effort that needs to go into this to make it scalable, right? These services, the pieces that are in there, I don't focus on them because that's a thing I can't validate easily. So yeah, the hyperscale days are gone, so chasing scale might not be right. But if money becomes cheap again, hyperscale might come back. Um, you want just asking, how you doing? Welcome in. Thank you for the follow. I scaled my bathroom. Scaling is everything. No clue what's happening, and it never works. Yeah, you got to be careful that you don't try and optimize too soon, and you don't plan for scaling you're never going to need. Understanding your user base, understanding your target audience, very worthwhile doing. Not doing bad. Not doing bad. Had some really good active discussions today, so not as much coding done as normal, but that's perfectly fine because that's what the stream's about. So yeah, so at this point, I probably want to move this behavior out of this and move it into the service, into the domain service, because now it starts to become, there's more logic involved in it, there's more behavior involved in it. Um, I I'm nervous about doing that from this perspective because it has some um, how do I put it? It has some natural tendency to kind of clutter, but I don't see that leaving it there is the best choice, being that I'm now going to say, okay, well, even if I go here, right? So I go to here and I'm going to say, okay, well, if we need to add the command, these pieces. By the way, if you're new to the stream, there is a Discord linked in the cards below. You're more than welcome to join the Discord if you have questions, you want to share. what you're working on, you know, you want to ask further questions off stream, you're more than welcome to do that. If you have projects you want to you know, have other people look at, that's a perfect place to do that. The way the stream works, if you are interested in what I'm doing, if you want to ask questions about what I'm doing, you want to dig deeper, you're more than welcome. This project specifically is not open source. This is a platform that I am building genuinely to try and make a full product. This is what it currently looks like in the current testable release version. This is not open to everybody. It is locked down so that no one can just access it. But it is open to subscribers if anyone of my subscribers wants to test it. But basically, I'm using it to plan the product. So this is the, you know, I'm right now focused on this planning item dependencies. I have these requirements. I want to be able to select a list of planning items that this planning item depends upon. When I create a planning item, I want to select them when I edit it, and I also want to see the list when I show it. What database are you using, and how did you decide on that decision? Well, I'm using many databases, right? These are all using SQL Server. This is using SQL Server. This is using SQL Server. These are different databases for every service. This is using MongoDB, and this is using MongoDB. So no SQL here, primarily because the data shape is changing all the time. So I don't want hard dependencies. I don't want to mess around with serialization of data too much. And Mongo is perfect for that. I'm always recalling things by their identifier. I don't need to query this or search it. It doesn't need to be advanced. SQL Server on these, primarily because it's just useful and I know what I'm doing with it. I am considering moving to Postgre, which will provide me some more affordable options as I go to release the platform. But that's up in the air. And honestly, it's not a big change for what I'm doing, what I'm using right now. Let me know as soon as it retails. My employer has never used any planning stuff, so this would help us. Nice. I start using MariaDB. Cool. MariaDB is like MySQL plus, right? And all the arrows showing the connections. What would that be done in programming by tethering together different APIs? Okay, so the way the application works is meant to be distributed. It heavily relies upon Kafka. As a piece of data is, as we want to update something from the UI, so as we go to change something in here, we send that as a command, as a request to the command layer, right? These APIs, and from a code perspective, that's pretty much everything in here. So this application piece in here is all those things. So each one of these has an API, and it has application and domain and infrastructure. Each one has its own structure. So data comes in, we write it to the database using the application here, and then it publishes an integration event to Kafka. That is so that these are not being queried. They don't have dependencies. Like planning doesn't know about tasks directly. Tasks doesn't know about planning directly. There's no API calls between these things. They are completely independent. Benefits there, I can bring up and down pieces of the application relatively quickly without worrying too much about, you know, the entire stack. As events publish, the view picks them up and it stores its own version of all this data, consolidates it all down, does all the joins and stuff to make it quick. And then we have a GraphQL API sat in front of that so that the client can query that. All the communication goes through the gateway so that to the client, it's one API. It just looks like one API. It doesn't care that there's, you know, 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or 50 behind here. It gets routed properly. The changes, when we publish those integration events, changes picks them up and says, okay, what changed? Let me figure out what the difference is. And it publishes a stream of differences to the, it publishes an entity, an event to the Kafka topic for changes. Transform then takes that, has pretty much recorded all the things it needs about these other things, and then enriches that data so that it can provide a more clear view and then the view itself isn't being bogged down by calculation, etc. So it's all about offloading the right pieces at the right times, understanding that eventually things will be there, but things might not be there immediately. And that's one of those big challenges with distributed computing. They are similar, but the JVM and .NET is more distinct, and how you build code is more distinct again. I think we're learning about it right now, called functional dependencies, where you decide what relies, doesn't rely on what in the database. Yeah. I have no idea what type of diagram is called because I just make up diagrams as I go. I am not good at diagramming in general. I like to use pictures to describe flows and to try and get my own brain around what I'm trying to do. And also, this is a useful way of showing people as they come into the stream that, because there's a lot to take in with this project. Yeah. So Obsidian plus Excalidraw is perfect. Diagram is solid. So yeah, I like pictures. Pictures are good. So, but I've never taken any college courses. I've never done anything formally in terms of documentation and different types of charts and stuff. So everything I've done is just purely out of necessity. And I've luckily avoided even the management side of that thing. So um, if I draw a diagram, just know that it's going to have arrows. It's going to try and identify flow and try and get my head around it. Oh, my diagrams come with words from my diaphragm. Otherwise, they're meaningless. Yeah. Life in the day of a senior tackling on an entire thing of software on their own. What a place to be at someday. Be careful. Just, you know. This is Excalidraw embedded in Obsidian. Yeah. And by the way, there is another part. You can see it to the right here. There is an entire backend for this application. This is the, this, believe it or not, this is the front end component. This is the client component. This side is a management backend for managing subscriptions and things like that. That is being built in a similar manner, except we're using Next.js on that side because Mojo is the one responsible for that side of things. But similar patterns. Apex, thank you very much. Have a great day, and I'll catch you again soon. Haven't been, by the way. Apex is developing a game, does a lot of cool stuff, and he has started streaming again. So very worth checking out if you're interested in game dev. Big Thing of Software got even bigger when you scroll to the right. Yeah. So this will have its own set of services. Right now it has subscriptions, it has a view in the same way. So it's following the same pattern. It's like a mirror essentially, but it is different. This uses Next.js. This uses Angular. The client really doesn't matter, right? We can put a new client front end on things, and it will be fine. Cool. Then I shall endeavor to be there. Catch you later, man. Have a great day. Yeah. So we have a lot of pieces. So let's try and get this just to a place where, so this is dependent, what do I call it on the side? Let's be consistent here, right? Let's not be making up different terms. Dependent planning item identifiers. So we go to application, commands, add planning item. I'm using a library called mediator here. I send a command from the API endpoint to make sure that I'm not just doing everything in the API. That is a key facet of what I'm doing. Request dependent planning item identifiers. Is this doing client-side rendering versus server-side rendering? I make this naive assumption because I see a lot more going on in the client side of the diagram. Yeah, there's the Angular client right now. I'm just using straight up just regular Angular. So the Angular client over here is this is the current version. So this is the version that's deployed, right? This is the working version right now. This is the development version that's pending release while we get other things tightened up. But yeah, this is all client-side rendering. Yeah, but this version is what's currently there. The client side is not my strong point. It is definitely a side that I am not as comfortable with. Coming up in the next couple of weeks, I hope to get someone on the stream who is more familiar, and go through this a little bit and kind of explain what I'm doing wrong and use that as a lesson. So if you are interested in Angular development, Tokamil is a fantastic developer. He streams a couple of times a week, Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, I think, when he can. But I'm hoping to get him on the stream in the next couple of weeks and to sit down and kind of talk me through, here's what I'm doing wrong, here's why I'm doing it wrong, here's some better patterns, here's some more idiomatic stuff. Um, Here, OpenAI moved their ChatGPT website from Next.js to Remix. I think it had something to do with prioritizing client side, I think. It's got to the point with client side front ends that, employers are kind of like, well, if you've used one of them, just, yeah, we're good. They don't really prioritize one over the other at this point. Um, I mean, what matters is having people who are comfortable, um, 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 yeah, I'm super comfortable. I'm a client, so I'm set. Yeah, if you've got a bunch of developers who are really comfortable using the tooling, you're going to get a more productive workflow, right? If you're trying to use technologies that are difficult because no one understands them, or you are just trying to use the coolest new thing, or you've introduced something for the sake of introducing it, you're going to suffer the pain, right? Because you're gonna make an initial burst of, yeah, this is awesome, we can do super cool things with this. But then when you hit the point where that platform differs or your developers don't quite understand the concepts, when you start to feel that pain in any software you're writing, it's normally because you're probably not doing it in the way that it was intended, and you're going to fight those things, and then you've got to go off and learn them. So working in tooling that you're comfortable with is very key, which is why this is all in C sharp and not other languages, right? Happily build components like in Rust if I wanted to, it, but I'd have to accept it slow me down, and for what benefit, right? Does C sharp give as many headaches as plain C? Um, if I was at the same level in C as I am in C sharp, I would be able to answer that fairly, right? But I've not done C, right? I've barely done any C++ over my career. So, is it fair to say, it's like me saying, well, Java's terrible. Why is Java terrible? It does a thing, it's been used in applications, just because it's not the same as what I use. So I don't necessarily believe in that. Um, and it depends on how you approach things, what resources you find, um, what problems are you facing. So for me, C sharp is a clean language. It reads easily. The structuring is nice. I can achieve everything I want to do. .NET as a platform, there's a lot of frameworks available to me. I've got a lot of tools available to me there. I can be productive on many different platforms using this ecosystem. Um, but someone who is comfortable in the Java world can be just as productive using JVM, Java, or whatever other superset of the language they want to use, and all the tools around them. So, yeah, it's not the language that's going to give you the bigger headaches. It's the implementations you're asked to, or the things you're asked to implement that will give you the headaches. Planning items. So I could call this assigned dependencies, right? Um, that would work. But I'm going to think about this because I think at this point, because I'm doing this pattern, I really should follow my own advice and move this to the domain service, because now, there's yes, this makes this just a pass through. Why don't I just use the domain service in here? Well, that's not the point. The point is, if I want to do logging or validation on these things, which I should do, that's where this should happen. So I can put a validator around this, make sure you're adding, you're not associating things that you shouldn't associate, your review date, the tenant potentially, does it match certain things? So we can tackle that. But anyway, that is me for now. I do have to get off. I have a full day of work to deal with. Would you say career-wise it's better to stick with and master a single language, or it's really true that language doesn't matter as much because each language is opinionated in its own way? I would say that you should go and learn how to develop software. You will find it easier if you stick to one language until you are more proficient with the concepts, because you're then focused on that concept. And then when you go to look at another language, it might be easy to pick up another concept. It might be easy to pick up a different framework or something because you understand the basics. So I would say, from a career perspective, also look at what the technologies out there are. Look at, if you're picking things now, it's different than when I did it 25 years ago, right? C# didn't exist 25. Well, it existed 25 years ago, but I wasn't using it. But anyway, let's go raid C# Fritz. I was heading there. Thank you, Defaults. I know he's just starting, but I'm going to raid and run. So please apologize for me if you're sticking around. I will be back tomorrow with developers.stream. So developers.stream, different software, open source, intended to help support developers who stream. But yeah. So thank you very much for joining me. Take care. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye all.